What grossed you out so much in a relationship that you just left? I went away with my ex and saw his toothbrush for the first time. It had black mold growing on it, and the bristles were so flat the toothbrush had a middle parting. I had a conversation with him about hygiene and told him to get a new toothbrush, but when I stayed at his house 2 weeks later, the cursed toothbrush was still there, so I ended it. It wasn't charcoal toothpaste. Her breath was so bad I couldn't make out with her. All I could think of was don't vomit, don't vomit. First date led to make-out session, but alcohol was involved, and either masked the smell or my horniness plus liquid courage just made me not give it a second thought. Second date we ate some super spicy curries, and that either dulled my senses enough or again, my horniness, and lots of kissing breaks, got me through it, and we made it to third base. My horniness prevailed. Third date, both of us just went right to my place for sex, and her breath just really was unbearable. She went down on me and I couldn't perform because I was so devastated from her breath that I was just trying to not vomit. She wouldn't let me go down on her, which looking back on things probably was a good thing. TLDR, her bad breath made me nauseous and impotent. My horniness could not overcome it, and that was the last we hung out. Dated a guy who said even the smell of mint would make him gag. Mint anything, ice cream, gum, toothpaste. So yeah, he didn't brush his teeth. Wouldn't hear a bar of it when I said there were non-mint toothpastes on the market. I realized after over 6 months together that he was just generally unhygienic and had a specific hang-up about brushing his teeth. He told me he had memories of his mother holding him down to forcefully brush his teeth as a child because he hates mint so much, but I have to wonder if it was always about the mint or actually the fact that the taste of mint was the most tangible part of that childhood trauma. I showered at his place after staying over and I asked for a towel. He gave me one which had literal skin flakes on. I asked for a clean one. He asked what I meant. He did not realize that you need to wash towels because they just have water on them, so they clean themselves. I was dating a girl when I was younger. She seemed nice, and she had 2 small cats. One weekend I went to visit her and the cats weren't there. I asked her where they were. She told me they had gotten annoying, and so she put them in the car and drove to an abandoned bush area and left them. I faked an emergency at home. We lived about a 2-hour drive apart, left and broke up with her when I got home. At a party with some of my closest friends and a lot of their mutuals, one of our friends who had recently been diagnosed with cancer was sharing some of his experience with chemo. My then girlfriend interrupted him by saying, "Oh come on, it's not that big of a deal. We all probably have cancer. Moles are usually cancer. Look, I've probably had cancer in all these places on my arm where I had moles removed." There were a lot of other issues that lead to it, but I broke up with her a few days later. I was just so appalled by her lack of self-awareness. These were my friends who I had known for a decade, and she'd only known them for about a year. And we were in a small group of maybe 9 people, most of whom she hadn't even met before. It disgusted me and I couldn't spend the rest of my night near her. Ended it within the week. Reminds me of my ex-sister-in-law who had kidney cancer and was scheduled for chemo. She was desperate and having something of an emotional breakdown. Her sister's boyfriend was a healer. He gave her reassurance and said, "I've had kidney cancer too, and I healed myself with positive thought." She cancelled her chemo, then he persuaded her to drive to see him once a week, 7-hour round trip each time, paid him a lot of money for him to ring some temple bells and chant, etc. Until one day she collapsed in pain, pissing blood, rushed to the emergency room, kidney removed within a couple of days. Thank goodness it hadn't metastasized. When she came to her senses and confronted him, it turned out he'd never had kidney cancer. It was a metaphor. 15 years later the sister is still with that fucking guy, and they are estranged from the rest of the family. When she was so insistent about not using a condom during sex, and when we were just going about our daily lives, she would constantly talk about how much she's always wanted kids all for herself. We were 18 at the time. I left her in the dust so quick. Left a girl like this who would always try to go from blowjob to on top without a condom. Just hoping I'd get caught up in the moment. Always talking about wanting kids and acting like it wasn't on purpose. My now long since divorced ex-husband admitted to me, after a night of weeping, wailing and vodka, in a desperate attempt to salvage our marriage via radical honesty, that he was so hypersexualized as a teen, that he had done many suspect things. Many red flags were flown. He'd been a peeping Tom. He considered sexually assaulting a jogger, and on multiple occasions, he had fucked his 9-year-old mare quarter horse. He took my catastrophic shock silence as a chance to explain that he needed a step stool to get enough height for insertion. Suddenly, the dancer from the nude bar he'd been screwing was unimportant. She wasn't that bad, shit. I realized very quickly that I needed to have a friendly discussion with her for her safety, and I did in fact forget all about my heartbreak. The radical honesty was, in that sense, a success. When they sent me videos of them cutting themselves cause I accidentally fell asleep for 2 hours, and they were convinced I just stopped liking them, and they wanted to kill themselves. Cause I took a nap. Big fuck no from me, man. The swastika I found under her left tit. What a sentence. Crying if I didn't have sex with him. Needing to be touching me constantly and eventually threatening to kill himself when I tried to break up with him. The guy texted and called for about 5 years afterwards. We dated for like 2 months. Asked me had I ever attempted to seduce my stepdad, who had been in my life since I was 8. I was 18 at the time. I just looked at him in bafflement and horror before asking him had he ever attempted to fuck his adopted sister. He responded with disgust and yet still couldn't see that he had asked me something horrific. Same dude also said he didn't think anyone was really bisexual, they're just cowards who won't properly come out. When I asked him had he forgotten that I'm a bisexual woman, he smiled and said nah, I'll fuck you straight. All this said within a month of us getting together. He's an ex for a reason. I just left my boyfriend of 10 months because he purposely screams during an argument, so that people in his family will hear everything going on. It is his way to make me feel vulnerable and weak. Says things like good, I want them to hear, I want them to know how psycho you are when I'm persistently trying to end the argument and speak civilly. It was like a temper tantrum. Needless to say I left him yesterday. He was on trial for manslaughter and I didn't know until he was found guilty. He kept trying to call me from jail. Edit. It was kidnapping and manslaughter, but he was only found guilty of kidnapping. When I saw his apartment the smell hit me first, just smelled like dog pee and this strong wet musty smell. I couldn't be in there without the windows open. Piles of stuff everywhere, so much that it was spreading to the outdoor balcony and Diet Coke cans on every surface. The carpet was so dirty you could see all around the edges of the wall a little brown accumulation, that and the dog wasn't potty trained. Well, the poo would get picked up, the pee was never cleaned so it soaked into the carpet, and I learned quickly that if I didn't have shoes on I might get a wet little surprise soaking through my socks. The kitchen tile always felt tacky and greasy. He rarely did laundry of any kind. In fact, I never once saw him do laundry, except the one time I offered to for him. He even had a little gaming den. Edit to add, Fortnite. He played Fortnite. Fortunately the dog wasn't allowed in there, but again, I could see it had never been cleaned once. Dirt and dust and stuff piled everywhere, cans and old plates of food left out. He told me once that he wanted to get a mini fridge for it, so he never had to get up. I was adamant that he didn't. I don't care if it's his place, the next step after that is peeing in bottles. It was shocking, he seemed so put together on the outside, and then to see how he lived, and this was after cleaning all day yeesh. I don't know if that was more gross, or the women don't know what it's like to work, women can't be trusted, women this, women that, boohoo comments. Also just want to add on, no I'm not making fun a depressed person. He was pretty happy, active and could justify anything he did. Didn't leave immediately when I was told this, but fairly soon after. She told me that she never cleaned up cat barf. She'd simply wait and let the dog eat it. Once the dog got tool deaf blind, she would lead the dog to the cat barf. Big nope for me. He had berated me for something silly and he was still angry. When we got home, he wanted sex, I wanted to read. He pressured me, I still said no. He got angry and raised his fist to hit me. I just looked at him. He lowered his fist. I left. I haven't seen him since. It's been a decade. I was in an abusive relationship for 2 years, and my ex kept insisting I had too many books. He insisted I never read any of them, and I finally caved and told him I'd donate the ones I wasn't interested in anymore, and reduce everything to one bookshelf. 1 month later I have my lone bookshelf neatly organized and one stack of books in my desk. He kept asking if I would get rid of the bookshelf and I told him no. We'd agreed previously, multiple times, one bookshelf was reasonable for the townhouse. Jerk revealed to me he hated me reading and having books because it made him feel stupid. And he wanted me to stop reading so much. Yeah, that really pissed me off. Broke up with him not long after that. He convinced me to stay on Skype while I was sleeping. And he'd literally talk to me if I moved an inch thinking I was waking up. What finally got me to stop was when I caught him saying to me in my sleepy days, was that if he was next to me in real life, he'd stick his dick in me while I'm sleeping, and put much emphasis into doing so without my consent, because you can't say no, and ride me all night long. I finally got the courage to ghost him after hearing that. I have told this story about a dozen times on Reddit. The first night I slept at my ex's apartment. I woke up in the middle of the night to an extremely loud scraping noise. It was inside my ear. A roach had crawled into my ear and was scraping against my eardrums with its legs, antennas, whatever. It was the most awful feeling I've ever experienced. I used tweezers to try to get it out, and when I pulled them out after a few times, only half the roach came out. Had to go to the emergency room to get the rest out and get antibiotics. I had a horrible ear infection for a couple of weeks. The worst part was her saying it happens to my son all the time. Like what the fuck? Found out she had fur wrappers and trash under her bed. Clean your fucking house. It has literally haunted me and given me PTSD. When I'm sleeping, if I hear the slightest noise, I jump up and swat uncontrollably around my head ears. My wife was shocked after the first time I did it when we were dating, but since I told her, she fully understands. Edit. My top comments are always about my fucking ex-girlfriends. Fuck. My ex would threaten suicide anytime things got tough in our relationship. Grossed me out enough that I just called it a day eventually. Cue the desperate calls hours later from the apparent overdose. She's still alive and kicking somewhere though. My ex used to say, constantly, that she wanted to be inside my skin. It was her way of saying she desired me, but it was fucking weird and off-putting, so I asked her to stop, and she couldn't understand what was so uncomfortable about what she was saying. Pretty soon after that I went on a week-long work trip, and 3 days into it she called and told me the whole time I've been gone, she wanted to cheat on me. Then she asked me if she could see other people while I'm gone. I broke up with her pretty much instantaneously. Out of the shower in our Airbnb, and was extremely agitated with me afterwards for not trying to save him from falling out. He was 6'2" and 230 pounds, I was about 105 pounds, and am just under 5'0". Not sure what I was supposed to do. It also should have been when he pitched a fit and deleted his FB event for his 40th birthday, because not enough people had enthusiastically responded to it in the 3 hours it was up. It also should have been when he booked a 4-seat reservation at a theme restaurant and invited one of his close girlfriends, but told her she couldn't bring a guy, and had to bring another girl. We weren't quite finished our drinks when our seating time had run out, and went to sit at the communal table to finish and leave. He chatted with his friend and the girl she brought with his back to me. He didn't even notice when I messaged him a picture of the back of his shirt because I was trying to make a point. What it was being on vacation with him and having him sneer at me for tipping too much $5 Canadian to his suggestion of 50 cents. You're going to skew the economy here, this is why you live paycheck to paycheck. Dude literally lost any glamour charm on him at that moment, and looked like nothing but a slimy human lizard freak after that. Never been more repulsed, and I'm still not quite over how disgusted I am with myself for dating him even a few years later. Annoyingly turning away in bed. Because I was crying. Due to the pain of my kidney infection. For which I later had to go to the hospital for because, duh, it was a kidney infection. Nah man, I don't understand how people can be annoyed about their loved one's acute pain instead of alarmed. I got out of that relationship pretty quick after that. My now boyfriend oftentimes cares more of my health than I do, and tells me to go to the doctors if I have pain. Dated a girl for a while, always seemed really well put together. Nice clothes, hair and makeup. We usually hooked up at my place. Went to her apartment once. The smell when she opened the door should have been enough. There were dirty diapers, overflowing trash cans in every room of the house. There was a super small walkway through the mounds of dirty clothes to the bathroom. And to make it worse, there were used paper plates on top of the mountain of dirty dishes in the sink. She proudly pointed out a moldy dish, and said that it was from when she cooked dinner for 2 of our mutual friends. 3 months prior. Nope, the hell out of there. Found our girlfriend had several fake social media accounts she'd used to bully strangers and harass women she knew, including my ex-wife. Instant dump. We went to a restaurant, nothing fancy. She treated the server like absolute shit. As though she was royalty and the server was the help. Yeah, that was it for me. I suddenly had zero interest in her. The kicker was, she was a waitress. Shit you not. I'm late to the party, but there was a guy in my social circle that I had crazy sexual tension with. Nothing happened for the longest time. Then one day we bumped into each other in the city, had a few drinks. The tension was unbearable and we went back to his place. An aside, I'd never had that kind of casual sex before. I'm the sort of person that needs to be in a relationship. But the chemistry with him was so intense, he was an exception. So we get to his place, tearing off each other's clothes. He lies me down on the bed, pulls my panties off, and sees my vagina for the first time. Want to know what he fucking said? He breathlessly said, "Oh my god, you look like a little girl. You're perfect." What the fuck? I didn't know what to say except wait, and sort of pushed him away from me. He was confused. I wasn't about to explain. I called a cab home and it was exceptionally awkward. When I met the parents of my ex-boyfriend, his mom was quiet all the time, never saw that woman smile even a little, and hushed around the house like a ghost, her head always down. His father was an asshole, who was super loud and told anyone what he had to do, while he himself did nothing at all. So when we left his parents' house, he looked at me with bright eyes and said, "My parents have the perfect marriage. My mom is such a good wife. She never does anything for herself, the perfect woman. All I wish for is that you will be such a good wife to me one day." Really? I was just like, nope. 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 Got into my car, drove off and never saw him again. He showed me, with excitement, a box of things he'd been collecting from me without my knowledge. This included strands of my hair taped up neatly, bobby pins and hairpins I had in from prom, my fingerprints and saliva sample that he took out of the trash from our forensics class experiments. He thought this was a romantic gesture or something, but it just made me really realize how creepy and obsessive he is. He was also very controlling and got jealous, mad at me for hanging out with my sister, or spending time on my laptop or with my dog. And he also admitted to me that he stalked my Facebook interests to pretend he knew and liked what I liked, researching the games I played and music I listened to, so he could bring it up in conversation. Total psycho. He told me after surgery that he couldn't take care of me like we planned, so he drove me home to my parents' place. My parents ended up going on a trip they had planned, hence the need for my boyfriend to help me, leaving me bedridden with my weak grandma and my grandpa who had dementia. Ended up having to rescue my grandpa, which caused significant damage and bleeding to the point I needed a second surgery due to internal bleeding, which got so bad as to burst my skin. Needless to say, we aren't dating anymore. Hadn't even met. A lady on Tinder had every picture with her daughter. Turns out she wanted a boyfriend that her daughter could share. Her daughter was 17, legal in that state, so I didn't call the police, but I definitely ghosted. Being passive-aggressive and expecting me to decipher every single message. Someone who I considered the great love of my life took this route, and it hurt both of us when I finally walked away from that relationship. I learned one good lesson from that, but I can still feel her pain in the most obscure and subtle way, to this day. Say what you mean and mean what you say, folks, because one day you'll fuck around and have that opportunity taken from you, and the only thing that will be left in your heart is remorse and regret. She was my wife at the time. She got pregnant. We hadn't had sex in months. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts below to support the channel. See you in the next one.